The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Eleanor Roosevelt. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamiza Ali. Good evening to everyone joining us on YouTube and on Facebook. Our topic tonight is how the ministry is responding to manpower needs to service the country's development. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave Westinian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh. Our panelists tonight are Dr. Muniram Guru and Mahindra Hariraj. We do apologize for the late start. We are having technical difficulties, so again, our apologies. As police continue their investigation into the attack at State House earlier today, Crime Chief Wendell Blanham told iNews that the Guyana Police Force is engaging Interpol to ascertain if the Nigerian suspect, 25-year-old Bethel Chins, has any criminal records. iNews understands that Chins arrived in Guyana on March 13, 2020, and is presently employed with a cleaning service company. The suspect, who was shot by presidential guards after trying to invade State House, underwent emergency surgery, and his condition is regarded as stable. According to information reaching the publication, the shooter presented himself at State House security checkpoint at Carmichael Street around 7:30 hours and requested to speak with President Dr. Irfan Ali, but was told by security that he has to be processed. At the time he was carrying a pouch, the suspect reportedly opened the pouch, took out a black handled knife, and attacked one of the guards, Telon Pereira, who has sustained 5 stab wounds. The injured guard reportedly held on to the suspect and scuffle ensued. Chins managed to disarm a female security officer and discharged several rounds. Another security officer then opened fire, hitting the suspect, who eventually collapsed. Both the injured guard and the suspect were taken to the Georgetown Public Hospital. Pereira was treated and admitted. President Dr. Irfan Ali has since met with relatives of the guard during a visit to the hospital. Police said a 9mm pistol and 7 9mm spent shells were retrieved. Investigations are ongoing. We at the Guyana Dialogue condone these actions and hope necessary actions are taken. Our guest for tonight is in an emergency meeting with the president, and if time permits, he will be joining us shortly. Dr. Tara, Mahindra, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys this evening.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Shamiza. As you know, our guest is at a meeting with the president, and he expects to join us a bit. So we'll continue. I'll invite Professor Budu, but I'm not seeing him on the screen.
Professor Budu is having some technical difficulties, so we hope that he will join us.
Let's
We
get
now have Mahindra with us.
To offer some comments on any aspect of development in the country in relation to the incident at State House or the indictment of the Duncan for inciting racial hatred. So please proceed.
Good night, everybody, and thanks, Dr. Tar, and thanks, Shamiz. I think first off, I want to convey my best wishes to the president and also to the presidential guard, hoping that the president and the first family is safe and that there is a speedily recovery for the presidential guard. We are living in unprecedented times, and today's episode again reminds us of the danger that we function in an everyday life situation. What is maybe more worrisome is that in our country that is so beautiful and on this transformative agenda where inclusivity is the order of the day with a government that is very focused on bringing a one Guyana initiative, that we have these occurrences. And as you said, Chimiza, these actions cannot be condoned and has to be condemned in its fullest. And I think with due course in the investigation, we will learn as these stories develop. But we again wish the president and all of his staff, the presidential state house, safety, and hopefully that whatever the merits behind this was can be looked at and examined, and obviously that there is going to be more meticulous planning and more vigilance paid, given that this could have been far worse. Um, but tonight, I think the topic that we are all here to discuss is the manpower that is needed for this transformative agenda in Guyana. And not to speak on the issue without the minister here, but because of his commitment with the emergency meeting, I think folks needs to understand the importance of having the right manual power in a country's development. And from my understanding, with my financial background, manual power is essential and critical to an organization, to a community, to a state, and much less so more a country. And critical planning needs to be uh, afoot and needs to be very mindful and very, very comprehensive. And I look at manual power planning in four areas. One, you have to look at the current or analyze the current manual power inventory. And as we can see, Guyana is on this huge transformation in the development sector where infrastructure construction is at the, going so extensively, and it's exhausting all of our resources, and the need for more technical, vocational, trained people, more skilled individuals. And how do we meet that sort of need in this growth phase and this transition? And also, given the time we're living in, where modernization technology is at the forefront, we have to first look at the inventory of the manpower we have. What is our capabilities? What are the current resources we have? And how does that resource either meet a particular need? How do we enhance that need? How do we ensure that we have more investment in that inventory? And then forecasting what the future needs. As we know, Guyana in this part of investing heavily in infrastructure, in health, in education, in energy, in a variety of things across the length and breadth of Guyana. So what does that future need looks like? And that is critical in planning the manpower from a skill perspective, from a vocational perspective. And I think that the government has displayed a number of initiatives and measures that is acting in this mannerism to plan carefully to meet the demands. And thirdly, how do you develop an employment program that then utilize the manpower that you analyze, develop, and then you inculcate them into the workforce, into the labor force? And thirdly, ensuring that you have ongoing training, ongoing skills that is going to equip them even further. And obviously, the government is supplementing this with additional investment in salaries, ensuring that there's prevailing wages. And all of this can only focus Guyana in a positive light line, because we know disposable income has a multiplier effect on our economic output. This triggers a variety of social economic development. So I feel the issue or the challenge or the need for manpower in Guyana has to be an area that the government is looking closely at, and that area is heavily invested in. And I think the government has demonstrated so far that there are critical steps afoot as to tackling. We've had the Minister of Finance on the program that spoke about investing in a variety of initiatives across the country. We would have the Minister of Public Service talking about the gold scholarships. Yesterday, we also saw the initiative of the 150K coders looking at the future as to what technology will need in our country and ICT across the length and breadth in 40 areas of such as the hinterland. So I think the initiatives are there, the focus is there, the plans are there, and I think the mindset of the country has to change. That is a critical component for this ingredient to work because all of the investment can happen, all of the studies can happen, but if the mindset of our people does not change and gravitate to the modernization and transition before us, we are going to be stuck behind. And that is what we see in many developing countries around the world, where they adopt to change and they embrace it positively and it transforms the country into an economic sort of prosperity. And those are my opening remarks on this.
You care to add or elaborate on the points that have been raised by Professor Mahendra?
Tara, I didn't hear what Mahendra had says, but I think Ghana is making rapid strides in various areas. 2.5 years, you've seen a lot of construction going on, and this rapid pace of construction requires a lot of skilled laborers. And I think there's a question at the moment whether we have adequate quality of work that is being done in Guyana. And I think this could be a major problem later on during the lifetime of these construction work that is going on. And I know that the president has been very concerned about this and he wants to do something about this. And I think there's a requirement for a lot of training and education to come on board very quickly for all the kinds of infrastructure work that is going on in Guyana, right? And I think this could be a hindrance later on.
Okay.
Mahendra.
One of the things I note is that there's heavy emphasis on training in skilled, semi-skilled, and other professional categories, and particularly directed towards the emerging oil economy. But what I'm not hearing about is what about getting labor to service the agriculture sector, which we don't want that to fall prey to the drought disease. And if we're going to develop agriculture at the same rate or even less than oil, we have to think how we can get labor to work in not only sugarcane, soybean, rice, etc., because there has been a movement away from that, and then the floods have exacerbated the situation, caused a lot of farmers to leave farming and seek alternative source of employment. How does the government plan to deal with that? So Mahendra, and then I go back to
Sure, Dr. And I think it's an interesting question. And given Guyana, how it's positioning itself in CARICOM to have the 25 by 25 initiative, I think agriculture is an area that is the bedrock of Guyana's economy for many, many years. And even though with the addition of the oil resources, I think this is an area we can never neglect and fail to service and pay attention to. So I think, as I said in my opening remarks, Dr. Tar, it's important that while we continuously explore, additional areas of our potential economy, a phrase come to mind: in challenges and in times of adversity, there's also opportunities. And I think we are going to learn a lot through this phase, and it's learning has to also have measured action. And I think, as you said, agriculture is a sector that is not going to go away. And I think the government has demonstrated its intent to further continuously invest in agriculture. But to your question, I think what perhaps what we don't see is how maybe the focus areas, as we are speaking about the infrastructure in construction and roads, etc., are we seeing the same level of intent in the agriculture sector? And I think that's what your question is around. And I think, as I said, the mindset of our population has to change. Maybe there's more effective ways for us to do agriculture. Maybe there's more effective ways to utilize technology. So while there is a need for us to invest in skills and in human capital, there's also this degree of mindset that has to come to play. Sugar is a big area of our country, with respect to certain areas and certain communities are built around the sugar industry. So it's important that we have the right resources in those environment, the right resources in those sectors, and we are not neglecting them. But what we have to do, Dr. Tara, we have to maybe the challenges, which is maybe not a simple task, is how do we balance investment in both areas? In the agriculture sector, which is a segment of our country, but also how do we also invest heavily also in the future of Guyana? And I think that's the discussion that is critical for us, and maybe the answer is not so readily available, and through investment, through dialogues, through policy, that will become more known.
Yeah, but I think investment is one aspect of it. I think productivity is perhaps more important, because you can invest a lot of money, but if you get less productivity, then it's useless. And I think we have to embrace at this stage technology and look at best in class practices. If you look at Israeli, for example, they are doing fantastic work in agriculture, right? We can learn a lot from the Israeli, right? How to use technology in agriculture. I just saw a couple days ago drones being used to seed crops, right, and to sow fertilizers, right, and the yield in these places actually increased by 2 times in the Midwest of the United States, right. So there's a lot of technology out there that we need to capitalize on, and but it's a two-edged sword. There's the technology, then we have to have the human capital
Right.
for that technology, right? So they have to be not only to obtain the technology, but also to conduct the correct training and education that is required uh, to get those systems up and working with the investment that is being placed.
Dr. Budo, I think one of the things that come to mind with agriculture,
Mm,
as I said, the mindset of our population.
mm,
A lot of young people nowadays, they don't want to be trapped in as like they're a farmer or they're a cane plant or a cane harvester, because the country is mobilizing into this
mm,
global stage.
mm,
More emphasis is placing other sort of employment
mm,
opportunities.
mm,
So while there is a robust need for us to ensure that Guyana is the breadbasket of the Caribbean, we have to also gravitate and utilize this technology that is available, the resources that are available, but our people
mm,
have to recognize that there will always be a need in food security, not only in the Caribbean and Guyana, but across the world. So agriculture is an area that will always require heavy investment, heavy human capital, infrastructure, but also we have to grow as the sector grow, as there's evolution in that area uh, of a country's development. So I think the while we have technology at our fingertips now and we have an abundance of resources, is how do we mobilize folks, individuals, to also embrace these sectors? Because I'm pretty sure everyone or most persons in Guyana now are laser focused on entrepreneurship or the oil and gas sector or other areas of employment, and little emphasis or not so much emphasis is placed on rice or in sugar. But it's an area that we have to make sure that we don't become complacent upon, because as we saw in many other countries neighboring to us, how devastating if we don't diversify the economy can be.
Okay, let, let me, in terms of agriculture, especially in sugar and rice, in view of the regular flooding, Professor Buru, as an engineer, what do you recommend should be done? How we can mitigate or avoid the flooding that occurs so regularly? And I know it's related partly to climate change. We can't do anything about that, but structurally, from an engineer point of view,
Yeah, well, let me address something Mahendra actually raised about entrepreneurship. That is required in our agriculture area, and I think we need to train people, right, to be job creators, not simply job seekers. And I think you have to educate the Guyanese, especially now we're in a transition economy, right? And a lot of people believe that we are there. We're not there. We are transitioning to a high income economy. And so during this phase, we have to educate, we have to train, we have to learn ourselves, right? And we're going to make some mistakes, but we have to be able to correct those mistakes. You see, so I think this whole area that everybody want to become a businessman is very good, but we have to educate them how they can become a businessman in agriculture. I was looking at some data, and it occurs that in agriculture, right, there's about 12.2% of the employment is in agriculture. It is perhaps is the third largest uh, creator of employment in Guyana. Number one is actually the public service, about 13.4%, and wholesale and retail is about 16. About that's number two, and wholesale and retail is 16%, and agriculture is 12.2%. But there is the unemployment is 35% for men and 31% for women. Right, that's a World Bank report I saw yesterday. Right, so there are people there, right, that can go into agriculture, go into other businesses, and function. Now I come to your question, Tara. One of the important things, and perhaps the most important things in Guyana, is drainage and irrigation, right? And for agricultural work, that is very important. And so that we have to have, in my belief, and I've made this recommendation to them, right? Apart from the normal drainage irrigation, they have to have a lot more canals, right? These are large canals that store a lot of water. And then again, you go to the Israeli, right? You see, they are masters of using water in a desert area. And you have to create a lot of reservoirs more in Guyana, right? If you do that, right, then Guyana would truly become the breadbasket of the Caribbean, and if not, supply parts of South America too.
similar like the hope on the East Coast, which the government has in mind, one in quarantine, one in Essequibo, to what extent that will help, in
Oh,
addition to the large reservoirs that you're talking about.
no, those canals are going to be help a lot, especially in flooding situation, right? The Hope Canal is a good example, right? And another thing that I've suggested recently in a report I presented to them is to have all drainage in all new communities, right? Be in that community. So if you make, say, a lake within a community to develop in, say, 200 houses, and all the water that's in that area has to be kept in that lake, right? Because to do the drainage and irrigation that we have in the moment, right, we depends upon cokers and pumps, right, and we are below sea level, right. If we can retain in a new subdivision all the water from rain that comes there, I think we're in a better position, right, to use technology then in a very economical way for drainage and irrigation, and we actually will actually substantially reduce the flooding situation in Guyana.
Think you should have a discussion with the Minister of Agriculture, who's a very hardworking and receptive person. If you want, I can try to arrange some kind of meeting through Zoom, because these are good measures which they can probably consider at least. If you have no objection to that, I can go ahead and facilitate that meeting.
I'll be happy to do that. I've seen. I lived in a subdivision in Florida where all the water in that subdivision is held into a lake, right? And they sold those lots as lakefront property, right? But that lake is simply a reservoir collecting all the drainage water. in that area.
Mahendra, you have any comment on that?
Yeah, Dr. Budi, I think that's a very interesting idea. My question to that would be, how perhaps do we maybe fix the current drainage situation where perhaps what you're talking about is future planning to community development? How do we maybe fix what's the current situation of drainage and irrigation? Because some of these communities, it's going to be hard to redesign drainage and irrigation.
Yeah. Well, let's start with what we have at the moment, right? Uh, maintenance is a major problem. There was always, when I lived in Guyana, there was always a problem, maintenance. You get all these canals being blocked, right? And so and then the pumps are broken, right? So if you have the pumps broken, you have all the drainage, most of the drainage canals are blocked, right? Then if you have a rainfall, I don't have to explain what is going to happen, right? We have seen all the consequences of this happening. So you have to have a good maintenance there. Secondly, you can use technology. For example, whenever you have a certain rainfall, predicted rainfall, and you have a certain amount of water in these drainage canals, then the pumps start work before the rain comes. You see, so we can accommodate all the rainfall, right, without opening the gates if the high tides are high. So there's a lot of technology, a lot of maintenance issues that have to be addressed with the existing canal. Now,
Well,
here,
right now they have all the pumps in Georgetown functional. That was confirmed by the minister yesterday. But
yes,
I want to yeah Shamisa, you have any question from the viewers
I
as yet?
I do.
You
I
want to ask
do.
two questions from the viewers today. I'm two panelists.
Sure. My question is for Professor Mahindra. And now we speak about the mindset of the people and we speak about progress, right? What do you currently feel is holding us back in terms of these specific things that you mentioned? Because we can have all these great things in place, but if we don't have the correct mindset, we can't move forward. What do you think right now Guyana is missing, or what is holding us back from getting? Because it's very clear that we're not nowhere close to where we should be for a country that's being looked at on a global scale. What do you think is the missing ingredient right now?
So, good question, Shamiz. And I think the population force have to recognize Guyana's capability. And our true capability is on the global stage. And that is first and first most important, is what we are capable as a country and as a people. And that would stimulate sort of the approach that individual has as for their involvement, their level of commitment to work, to education, to family. But in particular, starting with the family level, is ensuring that the government is creating a conducive environment with disposable income, ensuring there is vouchers, there is grants, etc. But the individuals have to remember that these things, as Professor Boudou outlined, those are great things, but how do we transform the mind rather than just receiving, but creating an environment where we are contributing, what we do contribute? So, for example, community. I see some individuals the other day in a community that the president visited. One of the individuals said, "I have a group of guys that will be engaging or wants to engage in construction," and they had a meeting with the president yesterday. Like that is the mindset, the progressive mindset we need. Not only have a notion or a thought, but how do we transform that thought into actionable results? And I think that is the missing link. Many of our people are capable, and sometimes the thought just die off because we are afraid of taking risk. We don't sometimes want to take that leap of faith. Well, we are in a transformational time in Guyana where I think the country needs everybody on board. And we have to, as Guyanese, whether we are abroad, whether we are at home, have to embrace that change is upon us. And We are going to make mistakes along the way, as Dr. Buru said, but we have to learn from them. We have to dust off and go back again and make it and do better. So at the end of the day, as I said, the mindset plays a part, but how do we effectively transform that mindset, that thought, those plans, those proposals into actions? And I think that is where, the embracing the change force, recognizing what we have in front of us is important. I think Guyanese across the length and breadth of Guyana knows whether what political side you are on, Guyana is on a transformative agenda where the country now is attracting global attention. And there is a group of individuals, as we know, have a progressive mindset with policy and vision. And then there is a group who is meandering around a narrative that is irrelevant. So as soon as we can place those things in the review mirror and clear the mind and really apply what our capabilities are, I think that is going to be a prerequisite for our development.
Well said. Thank you. What was that, Dr.
Shami,
Tara?
your next question, Samira.
Oh, Professor Murambudu, we speak of all these amazing things. For example, you were speaking of drainage and irrigation and seeing it from, different countries. And I believe you as an individual, you have some amazing ideas throughout the months here on this program. I've seen you, I've heard your ideas, and you have some great ideas. Now, I think one of the biggest thing our country has to do is take responsibility and accountability. We've seen roads that are recently built and we can see potholes, and there is no accountability at all in terms of the infrastructure in our country. What do you think we need to do or put in place for accountability to these contractors and other people in the country that is there right now?
Yeah, well, I've written about this issue in the newspapers, and I've spoken to the ministers about these about all of these problems they're having in construction. I think the auditor report in the last couple of years have actually described these transgression by contractors. The problem is this: that project management or project management for a particular project is very important, and it appears that is lacking in Guyana, right? So if you don't have good project management to ensure that you get value for your money, right? Then you're going to have the contractor is there to make money. He's going to find all kinds of ways, right, to make money, right? Because some of these contractors, they're not. We don't have a licensing arrangement in Guyana where the contractor has to be licensed. They have to have a performance contract. They have to have insurance, right? We don't have that in Guyana. Now, I'm advocating that we have those things, right? Similar things with engineers. You have to have a license to practice engineering, right? And so there's an ethics involved in all of this, right? And I think this is where the problem lies in Guyana. People want to make quick money. They don't care how to make the money. They're not looking to the country that we are doing this, as Mahendra said, we want to do this for the country. You have to have a sense of belonging, right? We belong to the country. What we are building here, we want to leave it for our children, our grandchildren, and so on. That is very important, and that is not there, right? But the government has to have vigilance, and I think there's a big breakdown in that. Even this last the auditor 2021 has a lot of issues in construction. That's billions of dollars that are being spent, and some of these roads and other things they're doing may fail. Right? It is not good, and it costs. The average cost is about 5% of the contract price to do a very good project management on all of these projects, right? And it can be done. Right? I realize from talking with one of the ministers that what is required is training, right? And that can also be done pretty quickly for Guyanese. I'm fully aware Guyanese are very bright people. They learn very quickly. I have tremendous confidence that will be able to be trained very quickly, both not in on the technical aspect but also in ethical issues. This I've heard several issues in which uh, there are cases in which people accuse people of bribery and corruption and a whole set of other things. I don't have data to support that, but all of these things do occur when you don't have good project management, right, and vigilance.
Andrew, you have a comment to that?
I definitely agree. That's one of the prerequisites to contract and infrastructure projects in the United States. But as I said, it's like getting that adoption, mobilizing or country to that sort of standard.
Yeah, they see that they have to be a commitment. They have to be policies in place, right? That we need. As I said before, we are in a transition, and we don't expect to get all of these things done right away. I mean, and we just can't follow what is being done in the West, right? We have to look at our situation and see how best we can adopt best practices, right, for the given situation in Guyana. So this may be a piecemeal basis, right? But
Correct.
it has to be done now. The progress we are making are very rapid. And I think all of those will kind of be spoiled, right, if we had bad quality work, right? It only takes one of them to fail, and then whatever the government has done, right, will fall into that trap. And
Do you,
I must say that what I've seen done in the last 2.5 years, right, is mind-boggling. Everything, there's a lot of areas this government is making tremendous progress in. And I think we like to ensure that there's value engineering is done in all of these projects, whether it's telecoms, whether it's road, whether it's in all of transportation system. We need to have value engineering. So the Guyanese people must get value for the money.
okay? Are you aware that engineers are required to sign a code of conduct and contractors?
In the United States, yes. In various other developed countries, yes. You have to have a license.
Does
In
it,
fact, for
from
example,
your experience,
sorry.
all right, let's just move off to this other topic. It's topical issue now. The mayor of Raj Narayan and MP Sherrod Duncan were arrested for race allegations, and they appeared before the magistrate court this morning. Obviously, they were placed on bail. The PNC strongly supported their position, but a lot of our organizations in Ghana condemned them. The most recent being FITUG, the Federation of Independent Trade Unions in Guyana. Um, Now, race hatred, race baiting is a criminal offense in Guyana. Now, people are saying that the government overreached. The police should have never charged him. What do you think?
Yeah, Dr. Tara, I think it's a sensitive topic, but one has to recognize that Guyana has no place for racism or any narrative of hate. I think it's a sensitive situation because the mayor acted way beyond, I think, himself, and the narrative he span is an area that could have potentially been very, very, very bad. And I think as much as what have happened, we don't know if there's a correlation to today's event with what transpired in the president's office. But this is how attuned Guyana is to everything that happens in the media. So I think the arrests and all of these things that occurred afterwards could have been dealt with a little more strategic, because I think there was a lot of emotions. There were a lot of sensitivity around what transpired the night before. I think the government could have handled that situation, in my view, a little better, to maybe perhaps allowed that situation to die off a little, have the integrity commission to investigate what he would have said, that was racist, that has obviously no place in Guyana. And that is how I perhaps would have dealt with handling what transpired the day before with the protests versus arresting him and removing him from the mayor's office there.
You're saying that they shouldn't have been arrested.
No, I'm saying definitely they should be arrested. But what I'm saying is the approach should have been more calculative. I think with I think Guyanese is very familiar of the modus operandi of this group, and they have no problem in creating havoc for Guyana. So I think we have to be strategic at times to know that there is a potential that we know a particular behavior will be the outcome. So we have to be strategic in planning our course of action. And I think today's event at the president office, it's not an issue we can gloss over. Shows the danger that lives in Guyana, whether this is a foreign national. What would have motivated somebody to even think about doing that in the country's history is something that is worrisome. And I know the president is very bold. He will not maybe curtail his passion to go and meet the people. But obviously, this should be a concern for every Guyanese, knowing if there is safety around in places, and if anyone, irrespective of race or political affiliation, can embrace this as something as acceptable, I don't think they're in their right minds.
Your comments.
Yeah, I'm not aware of this issue, but I can make some general comments as I see it. I think that racism is the single most destructive factor for Guyana. If we're going to use racism to as part of the Guyanese melee of things, right, to push, then Guyana would not develop in the way it should develop and has the potential to develop. And that's why I embrace what the president has been saying, the one Guyana. We have to all feel that we have a sense of belonging to Guyana, right? And that sense of belonging, for example, I didn't feel like when I was living in Guyana during the days of Burnham, right? And it is very important. If you don't have a sense of belonging there, right, then you don't want to do the thing that Mahendra has been talked about, right? Let us go and work hard and try and develop ourselves and also the country, right? You cannot think about yourself only. You have to think about developing the country. And we cannot develop this country as a single race, right? We are a multicultural society that we need to celebrate, right? And all of us has friends. Each one of us will have friends that are multiracial friends, right? And we get on very good. This seems to be just a political issue that's been used. It is part of the colonial mindset that some of the politician has, is to divide and rule. And so this colonialism seems to be in the DNA of Guyanese, right? And always, whenever there's progress, race comes into action. You see, I've seen Tara statistics that he put in one of his papers about the different makeup of the civil service and the university and so on. And those statistics speak for itself. There are certain areas in which you have Afro-Guyanese are in the majority. There are certain other areas in which you have Indo-Guyanese in the majority, and other races are in their own categories. That's nothing really wrong with that, right? There are certain people that have certain attributes, and that comes from culture also. So we have to celebrate this kind of diversity we have in Guyana, rather than always use race as a wrecking ball every time the country is making progress. And this is what a politician seems to be doing. And whether it's a mayor or some other ministers in the government, events in past government, we do that. We just destroying ourselves in this, and we have a lot to show to the world how we as a people, a multicultural, multiracial society, have been living.
Dr.
I think one of the main grouses of the mayor is that he can't get to meet the president, or he's not getting any kind of financial help from the central government. But let me just pose this question to both of y'all. The mayor and his political party has refused to recognize the government, the president as the duly elected president of Guyana. The leader of his party, he was invited to a discussion on a number of issues. He didn't turn up. He claimed he got a message late, etc. But they continue to refer to him as an installed government. If you can't impute legitimacy as a leader, why should I engage with you? Well, I mean, two unequal things can combine, can work. So, let me hear your comments on that, Mahendra.
Yeah,
Then,
yeah, Dr. Tara, and absolutely. I think, the mayor and his colleagues have been on this silly narrative that this is an installed government, while the world would have seen a particular party trying to steal an election. And we went through a whole recount and all of these things which verify the government of the day. But if you don't recognize me as the president, I have no motivation to engage with you. So I think first and foremost, the mayor is out of order. And it comes back to this lawless sort of approach to their demeanor. This is what they know best, I believe. It's a particular mode of operation, intimidation, lawlessness, carefree, I don't care. And I say that unapologetically because Guyanese have been numbed to this sort of behavior. So what we saw happened with the protests, I perhaps would have predicted, or any right-minded Guyanese would have known, that was not the end of it. So that is why I said before, the arrest, definitely I embrace it because there were many notice for folks to vacate the area that the government was trying to clear up because of the traffic, and the government made all sort of plans to relocate them. But the mayor here wants to just show he's the mayor of Georgetown and wants to act in a particular way. Georgetown has been mismanaged, and there is monies that is collected, and the government is doing the cleanup work. Where is the mayor and the functionality of the city to clean up the city? So yes, we understand the need for funding, but if you have mismanagement and you don't recognize the government of the day, then there is no engagement. I would not sit with you.
Professor.
Yeah. Again, I'm not too well educated on this area with regards to the politics in Guyana, but from what I've heard from you guys and what I've heard from others is that a lot of times these are childlike behavior. It was clear that we had an election that was free and fair, and there was an attempt to steal the election. But once that's been settled, right, we know that this government is legitimate, right? The president deserves respect as the president. He's doing a terrific job, right? I mean, he's a people's president. I've seen from some of the videos, the guy go in all kinds of community, and he doesn't leave there unless he helps them, right? This is fantastic. It never occurred in Guyana before, right? This is the kind of transformation we really require, where we get all Guyanese to participate, right? And to say that this government is installed is wrong. To not recognize this president, right, is more than wrong, right? And no one should be respected who doesn't respect that president, right? And if you are also not respecting the president and is also propagating racism, right, and religious intolerance, then you deserve whatever the law says as in Guyana.
Well, you just said the president doing a fantastic job, and I agree with you. But why the opposition forces are not accepting that?
Well, this is part of the mindset that Mahinder talked about. right? If you simply are not, if you simply want power, right, then you're going to do anything, right, to try to get into power, right? And that power may not mean that you're going to do anything good for Guyana. So you're going to use anything that you have in your arsenal there, right, to throw at the government, right? So I think they're using racism as one of those, in fact, as the issue, right, in order to drum up some kind of support, right? But we, the Guyanese community, has to realize that Guyana is making progress. The world, as Mahendra pointed out, attention now is directed at Guyana. We as Guyanese, especially those living in Guyana, need to show to the world, right, that we are ready for economic progress, right? We have the talent, we have the skill set, we want to make our lives better, right? Guyanese will have to say that, and they have to say that to those who oppose the government, right? I'm not saying the government is doing everything right. I don't know everything that they are doing. But whatever they are doing that is not correct, you need to speak up, right? But you need to do that constructively, not destructively. Because if you do that, then all these progress that we are making, right, will not have the value that that the Guyanese people should get.
Yeah.
So I think it's a wake up call for Guyana, right?
Yeah, thank you for your exposition on that. Shabisa, you have two final questions from viewers.
Shamiz is frozen, but if I may quickly jump in and add one comment to Dr. Budu's remark. Dr. Budu, they had power for 5 years and they squatted for another couple of months. So if the objective was to have power to demonstrate they can manage Guyana, they failed miserably at that. So one cannot understand what is the objective. You don't want to engage with the president when you're in opposition, and when you have the reins of power, you mismanage the country. So where on the political spectrum is your plans? Where is the objective? What is the policies? What is your achievement? What is it that you're trying to showcase? It cannot be simply to amass power, because what I believe happened in that period of time, their own constituents got hurt. So it cannot be just to amass power, because they had power and they failed miserably.
Yeah, well, this is also part of what the Guyanese people should be aware of. They have to be cognizant of the fact that this opposition was in government for many years, and Guyana didn't make any progress in any of those years. Right? Now, if they are now using racism as their goal, right, the Guyanese people will have to recognize that these people are not really worthy of ruling Guyana, right, and will not likely to bring any progress to Guyana. They have a history of not bringing progress to Guyana, and so it's a question of the voters. Again, Henry, you said about the mindset, that has to be embedded in the mindset of people, because it's an experience that those people went through, right? They saw, and I was abroad and I saw what happened in the elections, right? The last election, 5 months, right? We had to count for 500,000 people or so. It was really ridiculous, right? And we were the laughing stock of the world, right? Is that what we should be showcasing, right?
Yeah.
This
Okay.
government is.
Last question, Shabisa.
Listen, we can go on and on. We can probably easily spend hours here debating what is right, what is wrong, and we will never get to a middle ground because we have one set of people who wants progress and wants goodness for the country and its people, and we have one set of people who will do anything to destruct the country, destruct policies, and to just erupt and be who they are. They cry, racism, religion, whatever it is it takes for them to, you know, do whatever they feel is right. And as long as we have this, it's always going to hinder progress. And the history of our country has shown us what it's about, the divide and the, you know, craziness that happens during an election. And we don't want to live in a past, but we want to make sure going forward, our future is protected. And I'm going to continue to say the same thing. We need policies in place. We need strict penalties. We need people to be held accountable. We need our courts to be in hand with the current government to make these things happen. And truly, I don't feel we're at that point yet. Guyana went from a third world country to a country that is now seen on a global scale. And can we handle that? I truly don't feel that we're quite there. But if we continue to have these interruptions, it's going to take us a very long time to get where we should be. Uh, Professor Mahindra, I'll now take your closing comments.
Sure, Shamizan. Thanks, Dr. Tar and Professor Boudou, for your comments and remarks this evening. I think it would be remiss of me not to say I wish the president and his family safety and all of his staff and the President Garda got wounded today. I also wish him a speedy recovery and his family. But I think this episode has learned us now to be extra vigilant. And I think Guyanese across the length and breadth of our country has to wake up, because we are all moving forward to a destiny that is going to be rewarding for us as one. And as these things happen in society, we got to reject them firsthand. There is no place for racism. There's no place for hate, because these are only going to distort our own prosperities. And I want to leave with those commentaries.
Thank you. Professor Boudou?
Um, I think in 2.5 years, this government has made remarkable progress in Guyana. And I think we need to be very vigilant, right, that we do not get the people to impede the progress that this government is doing. Right? I believe that there are certain segments of the population who are not interested in progress, who is simply interested in destructive means, right? And don't see the progress made by this government as progress for all Guyanese. The president, in my view, has made one Guyana of his vision, and he's doing everything to implement that. It's not simply a slogan. He's actually conducting works that actually show that he really means that we want to progress as one nation. Right? Now, the disruptive forces, of course, see that as a bad thing. And so in order to not to impede the progress, then they're going to use racism, because I said that is the single most important thing for them to bring this country down, right? But I believe that the government needs to continue what they are doing, right? Continue to make progress with the Guyanese people, but also I think they need to market it. I think that the problem is, as I see, they're not marketing all the good things they are doing, right? And they have to say about marketing, marketing, marketing. And they have to do that and make it publicly available, all the things they are doing for all the races in Guyana. Now, I think I'm racially insensitive, and I've seen that some of the ministers have indicated that they do not take any demographics and so on. But perhaps because of the racial uh, the negativity that's been raised in Guyana, perhaps we need to look at that in more of a statistical way of how the resources are divided in Guyana. And I think what will come out of that, right, will be amazing. It will be reverse of what is being said in Guyana, right? Uh, because when you look at one sector of the population that is 26% and they have 80% of resources in one area, you will see that those statistics are against what those people who are propagating a racial division in this country, right? It's going to be against what they are saying. So let's move one Guyana, move forward, support the government in their development program. It's a really a transformative agenda the government has, and we need to support them as much as we can, because it's a progress or
I
Guyana.
just want to make two. I just want to make two statements. One, the primary function of any government is public safety or the maintenance of law and order. If they fall along there, every other thing collapses. And I often got to remind policymakers of this. Secondly, I on behalf of this forum, we want to extend our deepest sympathy to the young lady from the General Chambers who was murdered by his partner at number two Canal My Village. Nothing really shocked me for a couple of days. I couldn't understand it, and it's really, really sad. And it goes back to the wider question of abuse, especially men by on women. I'm not saying it doesn't work the other way, but it's more intense. And the question of mental health and suicide, I've written on that several articles, and I met with the minister, both ministers responsible for health, and they're going to support another project I'm going to do on that. Hopefully, Dr. Byro, the leading psychiatrist in mental health and suicide in Ghana. So once again, this forum, the Guyana Dialogue, want to extend the deepest sympathy to the family members and her colleagues at the Ministry of Legal Affairs in Ghana. Thank you. Shamisa, your final word.
Indeed, Dr. Tara, we try here. I know we have several platforms here in New York where we try to bring awareness to domestic abuse, suicide, and mental health issues. And we ask everyone to join us in these forums where we, as a one people, can come together and find ways that we can help our people. Uh, just being there to support the people who are currently doing these things and having their platforms available is a huge step forward, and I encourage you to support those platforms. uh, Tonight's discussion was definitely needed. For anyone who just joined us and was here to see the minister and didn't see him, he is in an emergency meeting with the president due to today's incidents, and he couldn't join us, unfortunately. But I think we had a great discussion. I want to thank our entire panel and Dr. Tara for moderating tonight, and to all you viewers for being here this evening. And until next time, this is the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.
I'll
Okay.
see you all